Picture this. You stroll into class, breeze through a makeup exam, and the score comes back higher than most college students. Feels pretty great, right? Now, imagine the teacher tweaks a few words on the next version of that same exam, and suddenly you can't answer half the questions. That, in a nutshell, is what just happened to an AI system nicknamed Centaur. Headlines cheered that it was almost human, but the moment researchers rephrased the problems, its performance tanked. Today, we're asking a simple question with huge consequences. Did Centaur really understand the tests, or did it just memorize the answer key? Let's dive in. Here's the headline, then the hiccup. Centaur sailed through a stack of standard psychology tasks. On paper, it looked smarter than many undergrads. But researchers tried a classic trick: move the furniture around. Same concepts, slightly different wording. If you or I truly grasp the material, we might stumble for a second, then adapt. Centaur didn't just stumble, it face-planted. Scores fell off a cliff. So, first big job for the replication teams: figure out why. Think of Centaur as a student who's been secretly reading every study guide on the internet. To see whether it really learned, researchers retraced the model's reading history. They cracked open the training recipe, hunted through public data sets, blogs, preprints, anything that might have seeped into Centaur's memory. Whenever they spotted overlap with the psychology tests, they flagged it as a potential leak. Then they built fresh versions of those tasks, safely outside the leaked territory, like moving the pop quiz into a room with no hidden microphones. That's when Centaur's once confident answers started to wobble. Second question: how different does a question have to be before we call it new? Swap a synonym, does that count? Change the order, still the same? The teams drew a careful line. They built what they called families of items. Picture the classic syllogism: all ravens are birds, all birds are animals, therefore, all ravens are animals. Inside that family, they might change ravens to guitars, birds to instruments, or replace the stiff quantifiers with everyday language. Surface details changed, but the logical move stayed identical. Combine two premises, test a conclusion. They did the same with memory tests, moral vignettes, and social reasoning stories, always keeping the core thinking intact so a human newcomer would know exactly what kind of reasoning was required. Now for the fun part: counter templates. If Centaur's training data often paired certain keywords with false, the researchers deliberately flipped the sign. Suddenly, that familiar keyword pointed to true. Patterns that once rewarded the longest answer now demanded the shortest. This wasn't meant to trick the model, it was a stress test. Could Centaur follow the underlying rule when the statistical breadcrumbs pointed the wrong way? They mixed old and new questions in rapid fire. One looked almost identical to a training item, the next reversed a tiny but crucial element, like who received a treatment in a study description. Humans figured out the twist, adjusted, and moved on. Centaur? It kept marching down the wrong path, revealing brittle shortcuts, specific wordings, default answer positions, habitual phrasings. To zoom in further, researchers wrote short, lifelike stories, small-town gossip, office mix-ups, cringe-worthy text threads, and nudged them in ways people rarely miss. A last-minute sentence might soften a conflict or flip sympathy to a different character. Most humans revise their judgment instantly. Centaur often ignored the twist. Subtle cues, "she hesitated before answering," or "he laughed it off," regularly flip our social judgments. Centaur leaned on earlier, louder descriptors and treated those whispers as background noise. Its explanations sounded polished, but they barely tracked the new details. The narrative texture just didn't shape its answers the way it shapes ours. These cracks point toward a bigger rethink of how we grade AI. Future benchmarks may look less like multiple-choice exams and more like detective stories, watching how a model revises its theory as each clue drops. Designers could log which detail tipped each decision, making hidden heuristics visible. And in classrooms, students might critique AI explanations, turning the model itself into a live case study of both brilliance and blind spots. The real test, then, isn't topping a score chart, it's staying oriented when the rules quietly shift. Here's the personal angle. AI already sits in hiring tools, grading systems, maybe even therapy apps. Before we hand over serious decisions, we should treat these models less like mystical oracles and more like rookie teammates. Capable, yes, but in need of coaching and constant feedback. So, before next week, try this 3-step gut check. 1. Where in your work or life are you taking AI answers at face value? Do a quick sanity check. Ask the system to repeat your question back in its own words. See if it actually heard you. 2. Think of one high-stakes decision you're offloading: summarizing a contract, debugging critical code, drafting a sensitive email. Slow down, add context, verify each step. 3. Next time you open an AI chat, turn it into a thinking partner. Go back and forth on assumptions, edge cases, and what-if scenarios instead of grabbing the first answer and running. So here's what we covered today. First, Centaur looked brilliant, right up until researchers tweaked the wording and its scores crashed. Second, digging through the training data exposed leaks that explained those brittle wins. Third, when scientists built counter templates and real-life stories, the AI stuck to surface patterns while humans flexed with the twist. And finally, that gap reminds us to audit AI like a teammate, not worship it like an oracle. The empowering part? You now have a playbook. Stress test the systems you use. Check that they truly understand your question, and keep them in the conversation until they earn your trust. Do that, and you'll stay one step ahead, no matter how shiny the next headline sounds. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep asking better questions.